I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Colter Pence. I work with the Flathead National Forest in the Northern Rockies region. I'm a Wilderness, Wild and Scenic Rivers and Trails Program Manager here. I'm here to present today about how to monitor outfitter and guide operations in the backcountry. I'm using backcountry because um, these protocols are appropriate for wilderness, wild and scenic rivers, just backcountry areas, places where you need to prepare, travel, and aren't necessarily doing an easy day drop in kind of a thing. So it's not limited to wilderness only. So with that, I do have a lot, so I want to get going. um, Wilderness and river rangers, trail crews, and even savvy partners often cross paths in national forests with permitted outfitter and guides offering services to visitors. This is an opportunity to monitor the quality of those operations in real life, in person, and then share that feedback with the permit administrators. You can be a part of that monitoring team. In this presentation, we're going to learn some key terms, how to prepare for monitoring, because you do have to prepare for this work in the backcountry, and then what to look for and what to ask about on site, what to look into, um, and then how to report your observations afterwards. So again, a little background, key terms, how to prepare, what to do once you're there, and then how to follow up. This presentation hopefully will increase the ability of all of field staff of agency partners to help implement the first 6 steps from wilderness stewardship performance outfitter and guide element. If you're this is meant to support the wilderness stewardship performance outfitter and guide element up to the 6-point level. Monitoring is a key part of that. Okay, so let's do some background and some key term type of stuff. So the role of permitted outfitters. The role of an outfitter permitted by the National Forest is to assure that visitors have reasonable access to their national forest recreation opportunities, and that the use from those outfitters, the use that they're providing to their visitors is of the highest quality, and that the resources are protected, the wilderness resource, the river resource is protected, and that the clients are able to learn about attributes of their national forest. Remember, the outfitted visitors are of equal value in a sense to a non-outfitted visitor. They're all visitors to their national forest. In this case, we're talking about visitors who've opted to work with an outfitter to enable their visit. Um, in wilderness and high complexity rivers, and I'm just saying in difficult to access places, this accessibility concept that outfitters help provide accessibility to those places is especially important. And that means that maybe a visitor doesn't have the technical equipment or technical skills to enjoy their wilderness river, so on and so forth. They need that extra support. So this is an important part of outfitting and guiding, is that they're providing that accessibility to people who otherwise might not be able to visit. Also, just a little background. We were talking before the class started. We could do a whole webinar on how it is that outfitting and guiding is authorized in concept or appropriate in some ways in wilderness. And again, I do mean this presentation to speak beyond wilderness, but I will address this really quickly. I can't do it all right now, but I'll cover it quickly. Under Section 4D5 of the Wilderness Act, authorized officers may authorize commercial services such as outfitting and guiding in wilderness to the extent necessary. Generally, commercial services are prohibited, but there is a provision for, to the extent necessary, some outfitting and guiding for the purposes of what that wilderness exists for proper realization of the recreational or other purposes of the area. So that's how we do have outfitters in wilderness. Outfitter and guide businesses also generate fees to be used within the National Forest System. That's the FLREA, Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act funding, FDAS, if you know those acronyms. But also, and we collect those funds and we retain them on the forest to do maintenance work, improvement work, investment work. And in some cases, some programs, like my program, is almost entirely reliant on those funds for all the things that we do here. But also, these outfitter and guide businesses generate gross revenue, which sustains our communities here. This is a major economic driver for my community, the gross revenues that they are providing to the overall economy here. So let's get back to what your role is in inspecting, monitoring outfitter and guide operations. Your role. While doing field work, when you encounter an outfitter, you can observe, monitor, inspect their operations. And I'm going to take a second here. I'm going to use monitor, inspect kind of interchangeably. And it sometimes is confusing to me when you read Forest Service handbook, Forest Service manual. They'll use monitor, inspect, seemingly very intentionally. Um, it does mean the same thing. Perhaps inspect means you're looking in person, but also monitoring does too. So I'm just going to be very general and use inspect and monitor back and forth. But anyways, while you're doing your field work, when you encounter an outfitter and guide, this is an opportunity for you to observe, monitor, inspect the operation to ensure that they're meeting the intent for outfitting, which I've itemized in these bullets right here. The intent for outfitting, which we kind of just covered, is that they're providing a reasonable access in the national forest, that the uses of that operation is of high quality, is safe. It's not overly impactful to the biologic resource or to other visitors. It's of a good quality. That resources are protected through their operation, maybe even better. And that the client is learning about attributes of their national forest. That they have some sense of the special opportunity that they have. In my local area, we are expecting that the outfitted visitors know that they're in the Flathead National Forest and that they know that they're in the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex so that they walk away with some value for that. Um, and your other role here is to be prepared for that opportunity to monitor. We're going to spend a little more time on this in a minute, but I want to preview this right now. Preparing means that you know what is approved in the permit. What are they authorized to do? What are they not authorized to do? What is the itinerary? Where are they going to be operating for the year? To what does the permit administrator want extra eyes on? We'll spend some more time on this. And also, how can I, the field ranger partner, build my field work around planning to do this? We're going to spend a little more time, but I want to preview. These are the things that you're able to do hopefully by the end of this. So I also said I wanted to cover some definitions for background purposes. This all comes from Forest Service handbook if you want to look that up. But generally, outfitting and guiding, I'm going to cover those concepts. They do mean two different things. Outfitting, it literally means if you break down the word, it means you're providing an outfit for somebody in that sense. It's the renting or delivery of equipment, supplies, vehicles, camping gear for pecuniary remuneration. That means for financial gain. To a client on the national forest. Okay. And the outfitter it can mean an individual. It can also mean the whole operation. Okay, if that's what their goal is. And so I'm thinking of outfitters as somebody who provides a shuttle service, whether by vehicle or in the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex. We have something called drop float or drop camp, where you are taken in by stock and dropped. All your gear is dropped. And then you begin your hiking trip from camp for a week, or you begin your float trip. Um, and an outfitter also, they're sort of the logistics side of outfitting and guiding. Contrast with that, guiding. Guiding is providing services or assistance such as supervision, protection, education, training, packing, touring, transportation, interpretation for pecuniary remuneration for financial gain. And again, a guide can include an individual or all of those who are doing that. So um, I don't think it's completely necessary to get completely hung up on, is this an outfitter or is this a guide? Just know that if you need to look up those definitions, there is a difference between those two, and then they're in Forest Service handbook. And typically, I don't even know about typically, but often there's an outfitting component of operation and a guiding component, and how the clients are tapping into those things depends on the service that they're seeking and what the outfitter and guide is authorized to operate. A couple of other key people in the outfitting and guiding world is the permit administrator. This is typically one person within the agency. This is the primary person, the point of contact for that permit holder. They are responsible for the administration of that permit. I'm a permit administrator. I take that role very seriously. And it's my job to make sure the proper answer is given when there's a question, correspondence is taken care of, filing, et cetera, et cetera. There may be other people who are knowledgeable of the operation around me, but I'm the permit administrator. It comes to me to take care of the business of the Forest Service's end of that. And there is an authorized officer. That's the person who's actually authorized to make the big decisions for the permit. This is the line officer, that is the authorized officer. They're the ones that get to make those decisions. Yes, no, um, we're going to change this, we're going to do that. I, as the permit administrator, bring these issues to the authorized officer, and the authorized officer makes the final determination. Okay. For outfitter and guide permits, that's usually a district ranger, but it could be a forest supervisor if there's some more complex elements for that operation, like if there's a resort component or something like that. So your role as a field ranger is to be aware of who the permit administrator is and who the authorized officer is, because you're going to want to be in touch with them and know what their interests are, what they're wanting information on. But also that you're not those roles either. You're not the authorized officer. You're not the permit administrator. It's not your role to say yes or no, or approve things, or get to the bottom of some things on their behalf. Okay, a few other definitions here. Permit, the official form is the legal form. It's been through OMB. There's all kinds of legal language in there, but you're going to want to look at the permit. That's why I'm spending time on these things. You're going to want to look at the permit. That's the FS 2700-I4I. It contains terms and conditions and allocation of use. That is a number of days for certain types of things, and approved sites, physical sites that they're allowed to operate out of. It is a legal document. Okay. And permits are typically 10 years, but they might be 2 years or transitional or temporary for a few other reasons. There's a whole world behind that, but often they are 10-year permits unless there's a different circumstance going around that one. And then there's an operating plan. The operating plan is a appendix to the permit. It is very much a part of the permit. It is just as much legally binding. But the operating plan usually has much more of the details. The permit can be very general, has a lot of legal language in it, and generic and sort of concepts. The operating plan will say this operation has this specific stuff going on. And often for a 10-year permit, operating plans will be for a 5-year term and then renewed for another 5-year term. You're going to want to research both of these beforehand so you know what's authorized in the permit and in the operating plan. A couple of other key terms here is service days. These are the number of days or any part of a day on a national forest that the outfitter is authorized to provide service. So it's not necessarily a whole day. I have river outfitters that provide half-day floats. It's like a 3.5-hour float, but each one of those is one service day, all right? Because they took one client out or 30 clients out for that half-day float. That was either one service day or 30 service days, depending on how long that trip was. And you're going to want to know those service day allocations because that might be something that you encounter in the field. Anyways, moving on here. And then the last bit here to be aware of is there is a concept of proposed use or estimated use, depends on what the system is you're using locally. That is what is planned or estimated or proposed at the start of the season, and it should be approved. And that's what you would maybe want to build your itinerary or fieldwork plans around, is what is proposed or estimated. And then on the back end, there's actual use. That's the final accounting of things after the operating season. If you're looking at actual use, that might be informative, comparing, well, what actually happened? They were supposed to be here on this day and I didn't see them. Well, you might be able to determine, oh, well, that's because their itinerary changed and this is what actually happened. I just want you to be clear that as you're preparing for field work, you're most likely to want to look at proposed use or estimated use, because that's what is the plan for that season. Okay. All right. Oh, I do have a few more definitions here. There's two concepts here. Assigned site. This is a designated campsite in all likelihood, that the outfitter is authorized to use for a period of time. Typically, an assigned site is longer than your local stay limit. That's why it's become an assigned site, is they're going to stay there for longer than what the stay limit allows. And they're also authorized to instill some development, some improvements, a corral, things like that. Comparison to a roving site. A roving site is a progressive itinerary, and it's not an assigned site for them. They hope to stay at that place, but they've got backup plans if that doesn't work out. So if you're looking at a roving itinerary, you know, well, they may be in this area, but they might bump around. Whereas the assigned site, you know, they should be staying in that particular site. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. So how you prepare for monitoring. Before you head out to the field, I think ideally at the start of your season, you would like to review the permit and operating plan for specifics that you can observe. What are the authorized sites for the year? What is their itinerary? What is their roving plans? How many clients do they expect to have and when? What are the activities they're authorized to do? And that relates to my second point. Review the itinerary. That is the who, what, when, where that's planned. So you can build your trip around that. Okay, they're going to be at Crystal Lake these 3 days. Well, that works for me because I can do a swing through there. I've got some campsite monitoring to do. So you can build your itinerary around where you anticipate to encounter them. And then the third bullet here is find out what the permit administrator might want more information on. There could be some history to be aware of that outfitter is maybe not allowed to use a certain site, or that they can use a site or an area, but under certain conditions. They cannot have more than 10 guests at Crystal Lake for whatever reason, which is maybe a specific history behind that. It might also be that they are looking for some confirmation of some good things. Hey, they had planned to remove this corral and do some restoration work. I'd like the permit administrator might say, I'd like you to confirm that that's happened, and document that restoration work has occurred. So you want to have a conversation with the permit administrator about any history that you need to be aware of, and is there any interest in a certain element that you can pay extra attention to. On the left side of my slide here is a few other things for you to evaluate as you're preparing. How many guests, how many guides? Often there'll be a designation, 8 guests, 2 guides. Um, and if you were to see 5 guides and 8 guests, that might beget some questions. Um, how many stockers allowed? How many boats are allowed? In my area, our outfitters are on the river system. They are not authorized to have as many boats as the general public. They have more restrictions. They may only have up to 7 boats in their group. And so if someone doing an inspection for me was to see that they had 9 boats, that's something I'd be very interested in hearing as a permit administrator, because that's a problem. I did kind of cover this already. What improvements are or not authorized for the site? Um, are they authorized to have? My area is, bear country. So how many meat poles are they allowed to have? 2, 10? 10's too much. I can tell you that right now. Are they allowed to have a latrine? Where is that located? Typically, there'll be a map of the campsite, and it will show like where things are authorized to be, even with the layout of a campsite. Another element is what trailhead or access point or put in are they authorized for? Every now and then we'll have an outfitter get cute and take want to take a different itinerary, but they weren't authorized to go there. So you want to be aware of what is their point of entry. Oh, I think in the river system we had a good one where we had a very, very low water year, and so they got creative, found a road on national forest that is a private road. Not open to the public, but they started using that as an access point. But they're not permitted to use that road. They didn't have permission from the power company, and we hadn't given them permission to use that road. So that's an example. And that came to light because of the river rangers pointing that out to me. And then last here, what other area rules and regulations for your area that would apply to that outfitter? So what sort of rules, wilderness rules and regulations, local to your area or to your river, that apply to that outfitter? In my area, another example is food storage. So we all have food storage requirements. I would want somebody to be paying closer attention to the food storage local requirements that applies to everybody, but including our outfitters. Okay, so once you have this opportunity for an inspection, you're hiking to Crystal Lake or wherever. Here's how you do it. How to monitor and inspect in person. You identify yourself if somebody's in camp. Hi, I'm Colter Pence with the Flathead National Forest. You want to be upright, forthright, and you identify who you're talking to. Hi, um, Julia, nice to meet you. You're with such and such outfitter company, and figure out what their role is with the organization, because that will give you a lot of context. Are they a guide or are they the camp cook? Like, they're going to have a lot more awareness or a little awareness of things, and you'll have a lot more context if you know what their role is. But if no one's in camp, you move on, and keep carrying on with your inspection. Um, and you also want to be clear on which operation is there. So that's part of that conversation. Sometimes for like the river outfitters, it can be a little confusing on who's who. So I just want to clarify who I'm even talking to, not just the person, but the company they're working for. And then once you've made that introduction, you start your evaluation against what you researched beforehand. You don't have to say outright you're doing an inspection. That can be a little intimidating. You can just carry on a conversation, say, hey, I'm in the area. I'm just checking in on things. But then you start immediately making your observations. You can carry on chatter as much as you want, and just visit with them. How's the hunting? How's the fishing? How's the weather been? How's this group? But you're going to want to walk around and take a look at things. Thank you, Julia. And you're taking observations in. I'm on the right side of my screen here. Is this operation meeting the terms and conditions of the permit and operating plan that you had researched beforehand? You're cross-checking with the things you had prepared for. And you take notes, take pictures, make sketches of camp, and note what's going right. That's a good thing. This is up to standard. These things are meeting compliance, and also what needs improvement, okay? Um, I'm showing on the screen here what is the typical documentation form. This is the FS 2700-1. Some areas have a local version of the form. Use that if you have it. But this is what you come back to the office for. I don't do it in the field. I just take my notes and my pictures and my sketches and come back and transpose this into this form. And that goes in the permit file. So you check in with the permit administrator and say, hey, I've got a bunch of notes here, photos, etc. How do you want me to get this documented for you? And in my case, I would tell somebody to use this form. I'm starting to wrap up here. There's much more to learn about outfitting and guiding inspections. I put some of the Forest Service resources here, Forest Service manual, handbook. There's some ag learn training to learn more fundamentals about outfitting and guiding and the whole concept of it. And really, your ultimate resource is your local special use permit administrator, to learn more about how you can help them with field monitoring for those outfitter and guide operations. And my last question here was, and I don't know if we have time for it, but how do you plan to follow up from this presentation? If you've got a thought for me, put it in the chat. How are you planning to use this information to then carry out your field work this summer? With that, I'll wrap up